I just laughed because it was so ridiculous. Like in Silicon Valley, they have this huge valley, right? That's full of tech companies. And in London, the government at the time wanted to have a Silicon Valley for us, but they didn't have anywhere to do it. So they just created this one roundabout. And so Silicon Valley had Silicon Valley and we had Silicon Roundabout. So it just shows you how tiny our community was at the beginning. But it was just really fun, and everybody was just taking the mickey out of me, like, that's stupid, that's hilarious. I gave that TED Talk in not the best state I've ever been in. And I really didn't think anything of it. Like I honestly did it as a favor to a friend, because someone pulled out last minute and he was like, can you just talk? So I threw it together like the night before. But I'm so surprised, like it's ended up getting, I think it's got like 4 million views or something, right? But what's most interesting about it, and I think this is something we don't talk about, right? You know, and I'm always fascinated because all the insights are in the places where we don't necessarily always talk about things. But one of the things I get every single day, somebody messages me on one of the platforms saying, I want to learn more about how to force myself to do what I know I should do versus what I just want to do right now. You know, what's easy isn't what I want to do. I want to do what's hard because I know it will pay off more. So it's been fascinating to see mostly young men, I've got to say. I think this is a very interesting insight. It's mostly young guys saying, really finding it difficult to force myself to do the things I know I need to do. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was so lucky because I think I kind of ended up working with consumer brands a long time after I'd worked with celebrities. And so very obvious things that when you work with celebrities, they're just obvious. There's nothing intelligent about it. It's just, that's how it is. But I learned those things. And then when I went to consumer brands, I was like, guys, like this, maybe I'm just not understanding it. And at the beginning, it took me a little while. Like, why did people define an audience as a demographic? You know, consumer brands sit in the boardroom and they're like, oh, you know, our consumers 21 to 27-year-old female in these cities. And you're like, okay. And I thought, well, I'll just go with it and see if maybe I'm naive, right? And after about 6 months to a year, I was like, no, this is stupid. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, you're never gonna get anywhere like that. Like, so I think the biggest thing I learned is that, you know, the function of marketing really, and this is why it's so beautiful, it's closer to, I think that marketing is two disciplines. Number one, it is myth generation. I mean, like intellectual property level, Disney level myth generation, right? You build something that is so much bigger than it really is in real life, right? You know, these guys, this is myth generation, right? And that is what I love, that stuff, right? Because I'm a frustrated filmmaker and all those things. And then the second part of what we do is hypnosis. It's hypnosis. We give reach and frequency until people literally it's just part of their memory structure, right? And we refresh that memory structure. But the most important thing is, we don't get to do the hypnosis if we don't have a powerful myth. Otherwise, there's nothing to remind anyone of. We're just scaling the superficial. So I think one of the things about celebrities is they never scale what's superficial. They only scale fame. And the only way you can create fame is to earn it. You cannot pay for it. You can't pay, not really. Not real fame. You can pay to be notorious, but that's not the same as fame. Fame is about leadership and contribution and leading a tribe. And so that's the myth you've got to build. And that celebrities know how to do that. And I feel like consumer brands got lost along the way somehow and started just thinking it was just about hypnosis. And they are right, but that's part two. So yeah. When you're working with a celebrity or entertainment public figure, you get to sit with that person and understand their equity, right? Like, and where you find their equity is in long conversations over dinner. You know, you have to spend a lot of time together. You have to follow them around. You have to really kind of get in their head and their heart, really. Obviously, a consumer brand is usually not embodied in one human being. So what you end up with is this cognitive dissonance within a brand team, where if you were really honest, no one on the brand team fully really has the whole answer. You know, so-and-so believes it's this aspect, and so-and-so believes it's that perspective and angle. And so you trying to kind of coalesce and get a coherence about what everyone agrees with is really hard. And so I started like doing these workshops where we would say like, by the end of today, we're never gonna debate this anymore. Like, we're gonna be like, this is who we are. And that was quite frustrating, but also fun. I would probably say, okay, this is a bit political. When Russia invaded Ukraine, we said, we can't just sit and do nothing here, right? And we were getting briefs all the time from different companies. And one of the companies that we got a brief from was a Silicon Valley, you know, startup that had raised a load of money. They're called Polycam. And basically Polycam is essentially, you can scan objects and it will render those objects and put them into the cloud, right? So you could scan a statue, or you could scan this light and it would get the dimensions of the object perfect. It's an amazing piece of technology. Anyway, so these guys came to us and said, like, we're trying to do marketing. And this was just when Ukraine had been invaded by Russia. And we thought, I wonder if we can kind of do something to help using this brief that we've just received. And so we convinced the guys at Polycam, because the app is £200 on the App Store, right? So we convinced them to geo-fence Ukraine and give the app away for free in Ukraine, so that people could scan, render, and upload all of the artifacts of historical, cultural, religious significance that were most likely about to be destroyed by bombs. And literally we had 728,000 people upload, you know, pieces of art or sculptures, and it's amazing. And the next, you know, thing that we want to do is we want to create this museum of digital independence in the cloud, where all of these objects are there, and we've made videos about the history of each one. And it will cost people money to get in, but that money will go to restoring those objects in real life. So things like that, like where you kind of take like a pretty boring brief and then realize that that moment in time is kind of actually just a huge opportunity, even though obviously it's a very sad and difficult situation. But I feel like Polycam would never have, like, they wanted a piece of content, you know, they wanted an advert, right? And instead they got, like, you know, they were winning awards at the UN, you know? So that was pretty cool. Oh, amazing. Honestly, what motivated me is the fact that it's in Pakistan. I was saying on stage today that, you know, I grew up, my next door neighbor, who's still my best friend, the guy whose wedding I was gonna be at the Mendi for, Zulfikar, right? So the family are from Pindi originally. Oh, well, mum's from Pindi, dad is from Lahore. Interesting combination. And Zulf, you know, he's my age, well, he's a year younger than me actually. Still one of my best friends in the world. And so I've grown up, you know, Zulf's mum, you know, used to look after me when I was a kid, you know? And like, so when I was a kid, we'd be out playing and then we'd hear like, Ajar Challo, you know? I have a Pakistan cricket top that I used to wear when I used to DJ all the time, right? And just because it was just funny to see like a gura in a Pakistan top, right? And so I've always wanted to come here, and I nearly came here for a wedding, but then COVID happened. So that was a huge part of this. And honestly, I've been as excited, you know, exactly as good and better than I imagined. So yeah, I've loved it. If I was just starting my digital journey, I would say the most important thing about digital transformation of any kind is that digital transformation is cultural transformation. Because what digital has done has essentially taken culture and put it into a place where everyone can engage with it that's non-physical, right? In the end, what drives digital is culture. And what people sometimes get lost in is they get lost in the pipes, but they don't think what's going through the pipes. Because what's going through the pipes is what's important. The pipes will change all the time. You know, a new platform will come out, that's just new pipes. You know, every single, you know, take away the internet from any platform and it doesn't do anything, right? And so the internet is this interconnected set of cultural networks. So I would say the paradox of digital transformation is that it's about understanding how culture moves through the pipes, not being obsessed with the pipes. Yeah, it's an interesting time in Hollywood right now. Like I've still got a couple of clients that I go and see every now and again. And, you know, there was a huge, big deal where, you know, the writers in Hollywood were basically told we're going to use AI now to write scripts. And rightfully they went on strike. And the actors supported them. And so it's going to be fascinating. I mean, in the end, what you tend to find with a technology cycle of any kind, and it will happen with AI as well, is that it starts off so visible because it's so exciting and new, like the iPhone, right? And it's like, oh my God, this is incredible. You know, people used to, you know, there were teachers, my mum is a teacher, and she told me that when calculators first came out, everyone was like, oh my God, this is gonna change everything. How are kids gonna learn maths? You know, like they're just gonna be able to, and so like we panic for a period, and then that it gets to the point where that couple of years, maybe 5, 10 years later, that technology is invisible. It's boring. Like no one's like, oh my God, let me see your phone. What does it go on the internet, right? You know, it just gets to the point where it's like, yeah, whatever. And then a new thing will happen. But I think people get overexcited about the spike at the beginning, and then they kind of, you know, when live music became recorded music, live musicians were like, we're out of a job. Everyone's just gonna listen to a CD now, or vinyl back then, right? Record. And they weren't out of a job. It created more demand for what they do. So I think Hollywood is the entertainment industry is gonna find this balance. It's probably gonna come down to the synthesis, as it always does, which is AI is just gonna help us get places faster and cheaper. It's not gonna replace the soul of art. This is another reason why I think demographics are just such a useless strategic approach, because even at best, let's say demographics are real. Let's say let's say that I can define all Pakistani people by saying this demographic of people do this. Not true, right? It's instantly absurd and almost offensively absurd, right? But let's say it was true. Even then, it's so shallow that you don't get to any of the insight. You don't get to any of the human depth, right? And what I found by asking people what they're passionate about, and I've done this for like 20 years, is you would not believe the things people are passionate about. Like, it's insane. Like that CFO that you think, oh, who's that guy, right? You might, if you ever asked him, like, you might find he's into like hardcore mountain biking at the weekends where he goes down hills and like risks his life, and he's broken like 12 bones in his body over his life, but he still does it, right? And you're like, and it will flip your understanding of a two-dimensional person and suddenly make them four-dimensional in a second. So the best answer I've ever received was actually and I was working with Buckingham Palace, and I got asked to go and sit with, you know, each of the people, and I sat with Prince Harry, and I was like, right, what's your thing? What are you into beyond being Prince Harry? And he said he was into this hardcore electronic type of music called drum and bass, right? So basically, it's actually quite, it's actually got quite a lot of Indian subcontinent themes to it. It's kind of like Bhangra kind of, but it's faster and it's got like massive bass lines. So he was into this like underground, dark, like heavy hardcore music, and he was obsessed with it. And you're like, that completely flips my understanding of who you are. And so you start to see the shadow self, all the different dimensions of someone, so it's fascinating. I would probably go for someone like the Prophet or Jesus, or, you know, because I feel like the message of those people is as resonant now as it ever has been. And yet people, I think, mistakenly think that it's not. And I wish that maybe there had been better, imagine if we could interact with the texts a little bit more. It would be quite fascinating to see where that could go, you know? Probably everybody where I'm from outside of London, which is a place called Essex, is a failed DJ. So I actually got the opportunity to be a borderline professional DJ for many years. So I had a residency in Ibiza. I got to play all the biggest festivals in the world, and it was so much fun. But here's the interesting thing. It was my passion. But once it actually became my job, I stopped enjoying it. And it was miserable. It was actually rubbish. It was just sitting in hotel rooms on your own and sitting on flights and then arriving in places and playing at 4 o'clock in the morning and being tired, and it actually wasn't fun. So I think now I just keep that as my hobby, and it's like, then that way it will always be there. It's lovely, but it's nothing I try and do seriously. So I've created an organization called the Digital Leadership Council. And the whole idea is about bridging this divide between the kind of digital haves and the digital have-nots, right? And I think that it's really an unfair thing to not equip a human being for the digital world now. Like, it's really unfair. Like, I can't tell you how many times I'm in taxis around the world and I'm speaking to someone who's absolutely, without a doubt, smarter than me. And he's driving me in the taxi, right? And I'm thinking, this guy's 10 times smarter than me. But he just never had this opportunity to engage with the ecosystem at the right moment. And so he's there, like, he's, quoting Rumi poetry to me, right? And I'm like, this guy's a genius. But we have to do a better job of giving people the opportunity to engage in these systems, because the economy is so built on them now that without them, you're kind of lost at sea.